Okay, thanks. Kathleen?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming to hear Libby tell us about the founding of Philadelphia. So, will you each please silence your cell phone, turn it off, or put it on mute so it doesn't buzz? And I'm going to make one last, it's a new request. If you've brought a coffee cup in with you, please remember to take it with you when you leave. Thank you. So, Libby, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. And good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you again and to share with you my love and fascination for our great city, especially during this 250th year of our nation. I spent most of my life in the historic area working as a tour guide in the historic area and then also for the Foundation for Architecture in Center City, later designing tours, writing part of a book on St. Peter's Church, which opened in 1761. There's a copy up there on the table. Um, and I have that and several other books here, which are some of my sources, and they'll be on display in the library after each lecture for a week. So, we're doing 5 classes, and to get us up through 300 plus years. So, um, uh, some of you may have come to my similar lectures a few years ago, and I'm sorry if this is a repetition, but I'm recycling them, right? Good thing. Uh, um, but I have reworked them to focus on historic preservation in Philadelphia and the role of the international expositions in in it all. So here we go. Ta-da. So this image you see on the screen was done by my mother in 1971 and 19 years before she moved to Cathedral Village, and includes most of the buildings you'll see today and in the coming weeks. Her father was an architect with deep appreciation of historic buildings, which he passed on to her, and then she did on to me. One can tell much about the evolution of a city by looking at its buildings, who built them, who lived there, when, why, what the current style was in the US, in England, or Europe, or worldwide. The growth of the city is recorded in its buildings, so its history is contained in them. So in this 250th anniversary year, uh, uh, this happened. I'm sorry, was this? Um, it happened mainly here in Philadelphia at Independence Hall. It is appropriate to look back at that building and the surrounding area and at the historic preservation movement. In preparing these lectures at this particular time, uh, I realized that in our city, the preservation of historic landmarks has been driven by anniversary events, and that the drivers have largely been women. Philadelphia is remarkable in that so much of its original fabric is intact, and that is largely true because of the historic preservation movement, which really started here after the federal government left for the new capital in Washington. So 1799, 1800, they were out of here. And then when the state government, because this Independence Hall was the state house or state where the state assembly met, uh, and they built its new capital in Harrisburg in 1813. The state wanted to sell the state house, and after objections were raised, the city finally agreed to buy it. But people were beginning to object to the destruction of hallowed shrines, and as the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence approached, and Lafayette returned to America in 1824-25 to what he called your Hall of Independence. And that's what you see in this image here. Here's Independence Hall. This is the Grand Triumphal Arch that was built in his honor when he came to Philadelphia. There he is in his carriage, and look at the huge crowds all around. Uh, and so after that, oh, and what do you see is missing from the top of the building? There's no tower, right? Well, it had collapsed some years before, and um, it was restored by in 1828 by William Strickland, who you'll meet later on. Nationwide, the most significant act of preservation was the restoration of Mount Vernon, starting in the 1850s by the Mount Vernon Ladies Association, who oversaw the restoration of both the exterior and interior of George Washington's house. Early steps in preservation here in Philadelphia began with the creation of Fairmount Park with its historic houses, which we'll look at in the last lecture. Then it really took off with the 1926 sesquicentennial, which, among other things, spurred in Philadelphia in the 1930s the preservation of the colonial home of colonial mayor Samuel Powell's 1765 mansion on 3rd Street near Locust. So here's the house, this first one, by Frances Wister, who went on to found the Philadelphia Society for the Preservation of Landmarks. And she wrote, how many years will it take to educate the public to preserve landmarks? People endow art galleries, collect pictures, take some interest in orchestras, but little in old buildings. And so I love that quote. So here she is, and here she is at the behind the house with some other people, celebrating this event. And here's the house, what as it looked before it was restored, and it's been most recently a horsehair mattress factory. Go figure. Yeah. So if you heard Paul Steinke of the Philadelphia Alliance for the oh, come on, let me the Preservation Alliance for Greater Philadelphia, you should know that, speak here last month, you will know how historic preservation is central to Philadelphia's economic success throughout the city. So let's go back and look at how our city developed, starting with a focus on Penn's original city. And note that all the present day photos of the buildings are proof of the success of historic preservation in this area. We take for granted the use of the camera to record events and sites, but before its invention in the mid-19th century, there was nothing but drawings. We are blessed in Philadelphia to have a record of our buildings in the prints made by William Birch and published in 1800. I will use many of them in this talk, but here is one that shows the High Street or Market Street, Market Head House here with Christ Church beyond it. Okay, so there's the east side of Christ Church. And I have a copy of a book of Birch prints up on the table, which a man made in the 60s with photographs, before pictures, and then present day. I think he has in the 60s and then the 80s of what things look like before the actual scenes you see in the Birch prints. So do have a look. It's wonderful. So William Penn, a leader of the Society of Friends, was jailed for his religious beliefs, which rejected the Anglican or Royal Church. A land grant in America satisfied a debt King Charles II owed to his father, and it also got rid of those disruptive, pesky Quakers, as they came to be called for their ecstatic behavior, and disruptive too, and was named Pennsylvania, or Penn's Woods, in memory of his father, not for him, for his father. Penn had lived through the fire of London in 1666 and wanted his new creation to be what he called a green country town, would always be healthy and never be burnt. He had lived through the Oh, I just said that. Yes. So here is his plan for the city uh, here. And see how it has two major axes, Broad Street and what they called then High Street. Uh, at the narrowest in the city, and it's a grid plan set between the two rivers of the Delaware on the east and the Schuylkill on the west, at the narrowest point, as you can see in this little kind of cartoon down at the bottom. Um, and you'll notice that way up in this corner, you probably can't read it. No, surely you can't. It says Fairmount. Okay? Yeah. Um, so so from the beginning, he wanted houses to be made of brick, being much safer than wood, and the clay used to make bricks was abundant in the area. So that gives you so yeah, the two axes with the four squares. So you'd have greenery throughout in each of the quadrants, uh, which are today Washington, Rittenhouse, Logan, and Franklin. But in those days, it was southeast, northeast, etc. And then in the center was called, go figure, Center Square, and he wanted to have a grand meeting house there. He never got it. He got City Hall instead. Um, so here's what it looked like in 1702. And I have to tell you, I have no idea when this was made, but it gives us an idea of what the city must have looked like. The first settlers of Philadelphia came in 1681 to get the town started, and then Penn arrived in 1682. But contrary to Penn's plan, the livelihood of the settlers centered on the waterfront, obviously, and the market, which is right here, and that's market or High Street. Uh, I'm sorry, it's here, right there is the market. And so, and look at, here's, okay, and right in here, there's an inlet, and this is where Dock Creek comes out. So this is Dock Street now, which went all the way up to beyond 4th Street. Yeah, it was way out there. And you see the houses along the riverfront, and then there's stairs that come down. So this is really a bluff where the houses are built, and then you have to walk down to the waterfront. And you might notice in a couple of these places along here, not stairs, but they had caves there where people lived until they could get houses built. Oh, and then they got used for smuggling and all sorts of things over the years before they all, it all changed. But the houses were probably at the beginning built of just logs, log cabins to get started. And look up here, there's like a little settlement in the woods where I expect the Lenape Indians lived. And Penn always said that he would treat them fairly. He would not build a fort to keep them out. So he had good relations with, he did, not so much his sons who took over after his death. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, right down to the water. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, in those days, there's still, if you go along Front Street, it's still up higher than the waterfront, right? Than Delaware Avenue.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it
That's
was.
why.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I would, unless you have burning questions, I'd love to hold them off till the end because we have a lot of territory to cover. Okay. So so here are a few examples of very early buildings in the new town. The Blue Anchor Tavern was right at where Dock Creek comes in, so that's what you're seeing here, and that's where Penn arrived. So that's Penn's Landing. Okay. Uh, and then soon to be built was a meeting house. Here it is at 2nd and Market Street. And then in 1686 was built the slate roof house at on 2nd Street near Walnut, which you'll hear more about later. And but notice that the style that has very steep roofs and small windows, and kind of still in the Tudor style, even going back to medieval small window panes. And then, but Samuel Carpenter's house was the biggest and grandest in town because he was a Quaker who had settled in Barbados, and he was anti-slavery, but somehow he got to be very rich, and so he built this grand house early on in Philadelphia. And then here's Old Swedes Church, which is a bit of a detour, but it's interesting to know that it's just down the river from Penn Settlement, where Swedish settlers established a Lutheran congregation on Tinicum Island, which is right out in the Delaware, in 1646. And then it moved to its present site in 1677, so before Penn came, on the Delaware riverfront, just off what is now Washington Avenue in South Philadelphia, if you know that. So it's, a ways down the river from the original Philadelphia. This building that they built there was finished in 1700, and the belfry was added in about 1733. So look at it without the belfry, and you can see the sort of medieval feeling of it with very steep pitched roof. And it is the oldest church in Pennsylvania and the second oldest one in the United States after the one nearby in Wilmington. So it's kind of wonderful that they're still there. And then here's Philadelphia in 1720, so almost 20 years later. And what do you notice compared to the original plan? More houses, and they're all along the waterfront, right? And they're crammed in together. And then look at all the ships on the river coming and going. And then they've begun to cut alleyways through the big blocks. So everybody's kind of crowded in there together. It's not very green, is it? And so by now the houses are brick, and there are 17 meeting houses, and oh, I'm sorry, excuse me, scratch that. That's a note to myself. You can't see it well enough, but the Quaker meeting house is right about in. Well, it's right in there, and the slate roof house is down over here. So anyway, and this is Penn's family crest. Okay, and so obviously the city is prospering. And here's a few examples of early houses in the city. Elfress Alley right here is started in 1701. So you have houses being built. Look how wide that is. You could get a cart down there, but that's about it. And this is a 1713 house, the Letitia Street house. And here's a not contemporary view of the head house and the market stretching out behind it. So it gives you just a little taste of the flavor of that part of town. Then we have Philadelphia in 1768, and you can see from this plan that it's, you can see the concentration all in this area, and how there are a few places beginning to move out here. And you've got the ships with the wharves, and all along here, you see there are words along there. Those are the names of the merchants who have their wharves there and, buy and sell, bring their goods in and out. And then, so it's really concentrated all along in here. And then the market farmers are coming in from Lancaster County twice a week. And so this is where they're getting their fresh food. Um, and the city, it's kind of interesting to think about it, that the city grew according to the food sources rather than Penn's plan for a green country town. Or shall we say it grew organically? But there, so yeah, so here's the market. And so all this is, the concentration of people living around here, and you can see some of those alleys cut through. I think this is probably Elfers Alley right here. Um, and oh yes, and the other thing Penn did was he named the streets. The north-south streets are numbered, and the east-west streets are the names of trees. Yeah, okay. And even Arch Street was originally sassafras, uh, and because, I don't know if you noticed in that very early view, there was a little bridge across the street way over on the right, and that was the arch that the street got named for. And apparently they had races on Race Street, so I forget what that was originally. Um, but anyway, it's kind of fun to see this. And then here's a view of the city in 1768, just a little bit later than the plan you saw earlier. But look at it, it's just crammed in there, everything. This is the Tower of Christ Church, Anglican Church. This is the Second Presbyterian Church. Is Jean Craig here? No, I guess not. She's done a lot of work on the archives of that. And I'm not sure what that is. But this is Independence Hall, the State House. Here, this. Um, and it's way out there. So, so by the time of the, backing up, by the mid 18th century, Quaker control and and ethic had been supplanted by wealth from trade with London and the West Indies. So you know what that means. So by the time of the Revolution, Philadelphia is the largest, most prosperous city in the British Empire after London. Uh, and so you see that this is the prosperity is written all over this. So getting into the styles of architecture. So I showed you some, like Old Swedes has the very, very steep pitched roof. And then Georgian architecture comes in from London. Everything came about 10 years later than it was in London, but that's, that's kind of how it worked. So Georgian meaning named after the kings, George I, II, and III. And it's a return to the classical styles, especially the work of Renaissance architect Andrea Palladio, who revived Greek and Roman forms. So we call it Palladian, his name. And it translates to symmetry in everything, especially doors, windows, and using columns and pediments, like as the Greeks did. Here pediment here, Palladian window here, and inside here at Christ Church, pediments here. The President's House at 6th and Market Streets, I bet you've heard of that. But all these things were suitable for showing off wealth in the latest style. So in this time, many Quaker merchants are becoming Anglican so they can show off their wealth. It's true. So I'll get into that later. But and so an early and most important example of Georgian architecture in public buildings is Independence Hall, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. So here again, look at the symmetry. It's made of brick and wood. It has the Palladian window on this side, on the south side. And so it's a classic example of fairly early Georgian, well, mid-Georgian, I guess. And inside, well, just to tell you how it came to be, and by 1732, the need was seen for a larger building for the colonial Pennsylvania Assembly to meet. They'd been meeting in the little room above the courthouse at the head of the market at Second and Market. Um, so they found a site on the outskirts of town, uh, Chestnut between Fifth and Sixth. So back on this plan, here it is, way out there, right? I mean, it really was. This was where and they've been meeting right here in this building, right at the head of the market. So they have more room now, and so the prosperity, the intellectual life initiated by Benjamin Franklin and its location on the eastern seaboard made it a natural meeting place for the creators of our new nation in the 1770s and the signing of the Declaration of Independence on the 4th of July, 1776, and the signing of the United States Constitution on September 17th, 1787. In this room, this is the assembly room. And here's the bell. This is this wonderful poster done for the sesquicentennial by N.C. Wyeth. And probably the best example of Georgian architecture in the city is Carpenter's Hall, which you see here. It has complete symmetry in that it's built in a Greek cross, so it's all symmetrical all the way around. This is the stairs going up to it on this plan. So it's totally, the front and the back are exactly the same. I'm sorry, this is the one, this is the front entrance, this is the back. And so you can kind of see it in this picture. It's the same over here. And it was, and it had a cupola on top. Again, another sort of Renaissance feature. And at this time, there were no trained architects in America, in the colonies. Gentlemen who had traveled to Italy on the Grand Tour worked with builders who used design books from London. And they just, hand a design book to a builder and said, give me one of those. And probably one of the best known one of them was by a man named Batty Langley. And you see, this is the front page of it. So the Builders and Workmen's Treasury of Designs. And it is, and it's handwritten here, Robert Smith, his copy. And that is in the Carpenter's Hall Library to this day. And so that's what he used to design Carpenter's Hall. He was he was from Scotland, came to Philadelphia in the 1740s, and had probably trained with Scottish architect or builder, designer, whatever, Robert Adam. Adam Furniture is very famous. He clearly had design and engineering skills and became the most prominent American builder in the 18th century. He also did Christ Church Tower, which I showed you before, and he did Nassau Hall at Princeton and a slew of other buildings around in the colonies. And now the nation's first hospital was founded by Dr. Thomas Bond and Benjamin Franklin in 1751. As Bond said, quote, to take care of the sick, poor, and insane who were wandering the streets of Philadelphia. The designer was Samuel Rhodes, and Robert Smith sort of checked in on him with it occasionally. So the first part here in the birch print was done in 1755 in the Georgian style. And then this larger edition that you see here and here was added in 1794 in the federal style. So relating to the federal era when Philadelphia was the capital of the country. And you're going to hear more about Pennsylvania Hospital from Kathleen McGran in the summer, Kathleen, right? Yeah. Yes, and somebody from uh, Pennsylvania Hospital will come to talk about this main building. Um, Now, here's Philadelphia in 1762. So this is a detail of the map I've showed you before. And here's the Dock Creek that comes down here. So uh, and the name Society Hill comes from the fact that in 1684, so very early on, William Penn set up a real estate development company called the Society of Free Traders, with its headquarters on a bluff overlooking the Delaware, so known as the Society's Hill, right about in here. And the company failed as no one was interested in living there yet. But once a bridge was erected across Dock Creek and a new market was started at 2nd and Pine Streets, and here's a birch print of that, uh, in the 1740s, people came, especially, and moved into the area, built houses. People who had succeeded so well, they wanted to have large houses with gardens, as William Penn had envisioned. So this is, if you know Head House Square, that's what this is. There's the cupola down there. I have another picture of it later on, but it's in that birch print. And it stretched all the way to South Street then, not just to Lombard, as it is now. And there were houses of worship being built in the area. There was a Friends Meeting House in the 100 block of Pine Street, long gone. St. Mary's Catholic Church was built in 1763 at 4th and Locust Streets. And there was an earlier Catholic church, St. Joseph's, just down the street from it, but there are no images of it. But it was started in 1733, and it was the only place at that time where Catholic Mass could be celebrated publicly, thanks to William Penn's guarantee of freedom of religion. And then there was the Old Pine Presbyterian at 4th and Pine Streets, looked like this in the beginning, also designed by Robert Smith. That's at 4th and Pine Streets. And then there's St. Peter's, which I've been involved with for God knows how many years. And it's at 3rd and Pine Streets, and here's what it looked like in the beginning. So a good example of Georgian architecture with the Palladian window, and some of the windows are arched and some of them are square and well, are semi-arched, I guess you'd say. I was in London once, I don't know, about 20 years ago, and I was trying to walk from a subway station up to St. Paul's Cathedral, and I came across this church called St. Andrew's by the Wardrobe, which was designed by Sir Christopher Wren in 1695. And that's what it looked like. And look at this, and look at that. I mean, it was, and Robert Smith worked in London for a while before coming to Philadelphia. So he could very well have seen this church and taken notes. So there it is, and you'll notice what's one thing which is kind of intriguing is this. Notice there are 4 doors. Well, there's 2 here and 2 there, and that the doors on this side have an arched pediment, whereas on the north side they're just straight. So these were harder to make, so more expensive, so fancier. And although now the entrance to the church is in this door, we think that this was probably the main entrance. And I'll show you, well, you see in the next slide. So the church opened for services. So Robert Smith designed it starting in 1758, and it opened in 1761 and was part of Christ Church until 1832. And this is what it looks like inside. And it's a very rare church in that it has the pulpit at the west end and the altar at the east end here. And this organ case, which started out in this up in this gallery, uh, covers up the Palladian window, which is kind of too bad. But if you want to see, it, you go to Christ Church and look. But uh, anyway, and so look at this design. This is from the Batty Langley book, and it's the pulpit is like this on the bottom, and then no, excuse me, like this, and then the canopy, it's called the upper part, is like this. So he just is messing around with the design, and came up with this. He also designed a roof truss, which would allow this broad expanse, and you didn't have to have columns holding up the roof or anything like that. So um, it was, and you notice it's all white and clear glass on the interior. We think to make those Anglicans who had formerly been Quakers uh, feel less guilty, but 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 they have their splashes of bling, so you can't quite tell what this is. But this is the underside of the canopy, so it's all gold, and there's all gold on the as you can tell on the organ case, and so um, anyway, it's. Um, I had just a little story when I was writing the book that's up there on the table. Um, I talked to the head of the Philadelphia Athenaeum, and he told me that the Batty Langley book was in the Carpenters Company library, and he got it for me and took. They have a scanner at the Athenaeum, scanned it and sent me this picture. So it's like, yes, it was wonderful. Um, anyway, so just here's a quick look at Georgian domestic architecture. And here you can see in this plan or design that the earliest varieties are 1700 to 1750, and then getting larger and larger and larger and larger and more, pediments, arched doorways, fan lights, uh, and what's happening is that glass manufacturing keeps improving, and they can get larger panes of glass, which means they can have larger windows and higher ceilings and more space. So this is just sort of a technological thing that changed architecture. Um, and this row of houses really kind of demonstrated. This is on 3rd Street, just south of Spruce. Um, and here's some just examples in the Society Hill area. There's the Powell House you've seen before. There you see that Georgian style. Here's a little one, the Barclay House, about 1750. And here's, so this is basically a 2-story house. Then they get to 3 stories. Here's another 2-story. This is the Man Full of Trouble Tavern, which was recently restored and reopened, and it operates as a tavern downstairs and a little museum upstairs. And this is 2 houses put together, as it was in 1759. And then just beyond, here are these 2 mansions, much larger and more elegant than the more humble tavern. And then we get into the federal style, which I mentioned before with Pennsylvania Hospital. But you see, here's a birch print of taken from 3rd Street, says right here, 3rd Street by Spruce. And this was the grand house of William Bingham, which was built here very much in the federal style and straight back from London, where he and his bride had been living. And she is the daughter of Thomas Willing, who owned the property on this whole block. And Elizabeth Powell, and this is the Powell house here, was Elizabeth Willing. So this is all family property. And what's wonderful in this image from about about 1800 is the Powells had added on an octagonal wing to entertain in, and it's gone now. But people only discovered it in recent years. The I wrote that wrong. Hill Physic Keith House. Sorry. Um, is here at 4th and Delancey, and has again these, this large, but this beautiful doorway with this incredible fan light. Uh, and that's 1787, so that's a uh, later time. And it too is owned by the Philadelphia Society for Landmarks, that owns the Powell House. So moving forward, the Philadelphia gets industrialized. We'll hear more about that next week. So railroads are now able to take people who could afford it out of the city and to newly developing suburbs such as the Main Line, Mount Airy, Chestnut Hill, away from the noise and pollution of the city. Uh, the Dock Street Market is started here after they took out the Market Street Market and put in trolley cars, and that's when the Reading Terminal Market started, because they had to move the market off the main street. And this becomes the produce market for the city. And you look that this is here, and just around the bend is this one. This is the Man Full of Trouble Tavern, right in there. So, and this is the Merchants Exchange building, which is right, it's in the midst of all of this. It's right sort of up about there. And so it brings decline to the neighborhood. And the Delaware Avenue is looking like this, with all the these rail lines here, and wagons and warehouses and whatnot. And here's some more. And then this is the immigration station at the foot of Washington Avenue. So Old Sweets Church is like basically right across from it. And that's the immigrants are coming and moving into that area. And here's a little look by the 1940s. This is what the area is looking like. So that kind of brings it up to what I'll talk about next week, or is it next week's in 2 weeks, whatever it is. But I want to go back and just turn to the preservation movement's major development in the post-World War II period, the creation of Independence National Historical Park to preserve the historic buildings where our nation was created. Now, I've mentioned to you before that Philadelphia was the federal capital from 1790 to 1800. So Independence Hall was, and the adjoining buildings were the United States government. So with Old City Hall here on the left, so this was the City Hall, and then then the Congress Hall was built. In these sort of right at the time they have the new government with the Articles of Confederation. There's Philadelphia's becoming the center, and it's going to become the capital. So they built Congress Hall. So in Old City Hall, the Supreme Court meets on the second floor, and this is the courtroom, Supreme Court. And in Congress Hall over here, downstairs is the House of Representatives here, and upstairs is the Senate. So it's the upper house. That's where it comes from. Yeah. And just down the hall from the Senate, because it wasn't as big a room, they had room towards the front. They kept their books in there to refer to laws and this, that, and the other thing, and that became the Library of Congress. That's where it started. And so compare all this to Washington now. Okay, so the creation of Independence National Historical Park. In the wake of the 1926 sesquicentennial, there was a movement to protect our national heritage buildings, which was intensified by increased patriotism during World War II. On June 28, 1948, Congress authorized the creation of Independence National Historical Park, and it was formally established on July 4th, 1956. In 1940, in 1949, an agreement was made between the National Park Service and the city of Philadelphia in the designated area. The city would get or maintain possession of the various properties, and that the federal government would assume responsibility for the restoration of the various buildings, the maintenance and the use of the buildings, and the surrounding land. As you can see from the map, it included the buildings on Independence Square. So here's Independence Hall right here. Uh, so it's the hall and then the adjoining buildings, and then many others associated with the early history of our country. So everything in red is a building. And Carpenter's Hall is right here. And I'll be talking to you about some of the others as we go along. So the massive project to restore the interior of the hall was carried out very successfully by preservation architects Charles Peterson and Penelope Hartshorn Batchelor. The assembly room was especially difficult because it had many coats of paint on the walls and many changes had been made to the woodwork over the years. So here's what it looked like probably when Lafayette came, because this is a portrait of Lafayette here, and this is George Washington here, and it has all sorts of fancy woodwork and decoration. Here's the Liberty Bell right there. And everybody's coming and admiring it. And then here's what it looked like before restoration, and it's so you can see a little bit. This you see in here. There's all, yeah, yeah. These are all portraits, and in this room, here they are. There's many of them on this wall, and this is all very fancy, and what it ends up looking like. And they go through, they go down through layers of the paint, and they did all sorts of research on the woodwork, and this is what they came up. This is what it looked like originally, and so that was a huge project, especially with the woodwork and the paneling and things had been covered up, and so on and so forth. And then here's the courtroom, which is straight across the hall from the center hall from the assembly room. And it looked like this before the restoration. And then that's what it looks like now, which is less of a change, but fewer portraits on the wall. And then the tower room, and I don't know any of you remember the Liberty Bell being here in the tower hall here, but there where they took it out of the assembly room and put it in here, and which was great. And this is the hall, the tower room restored. Very beautiful. And then here's a wonderful thing. Here's the birch print of Independence Square with the indigenous tribal leaders coming to meet with the Senate in the 1790s. And it shows a clock on the side of the west side of Independence Hall. And here's a picture from the 1960s that doesn't show any clock. And so they figured out that there was a clock there made by a man named Thomas Stretch. And so they wanted to restore it, and so they made a replica of it, which but they had this to guide them and maybe other materials too. But there it is in the 1800 view. And here you see it back in its original place. But the works inside it are electric, thank goodness. So it works. And so that's amazing to see they were able to do that. And then the creation of Independence Mall from Walnut Street, starting first at to Market. So here's a view of here's Independence Hall before the mall was built. So there's just, office buildings all along Chestnut Street here. And then they start tearing everything down. they create a mall here, uh, which is paid for by the state, and so that's still there today. And then they took the Liberty Bell out of Independence Hall and put it in a special pavilion in time for the bicentennial, and that was there until about, no, I don't know, 25 years ago, something. And then they built the new Liberty Bell Center, which is here, and there's this big window. That's where the Liberty Bell is, right inside that window, so you can stand and look at it, and where it hung originally up in here. And so and in between those times, there was a fountain built in the right about here. Uh, and then when they built the Constitution Center, they stretched them all out even further. So the new visitor center and the Constitution Center are there on this block from what is that, Race, Arch to Race, yeah, Market, Arch, Race, yeah. And so that's the mall. And something you might have heard about lately is what's happening at the president's house these days, and who knows how that'll play out. But we sure hope this fascinating and beautifully done exhibit gets back there. I also wanted to point out to you the Bishop White House, and for those of you who don't know what Bishop White Lodge is named for, here he is, William White, who was the founder of the Episcopal Church, rector of Christ Church and St. Peter's, and he built this house in 1787 to be about midway between his two parishes, beautifully restored by the time of the bicentennial. And in the restoration, the Park Service curators were helped by this painting by John Sartain that is on the stand here, which is an accurate description of the house in this room before, right at the time White died. And so right here here by the fireplace is his chair. And when they were restoring the woodwork in this room, they, cut through the layers of paint and found burn marks on that piece of little ledge right there. And it's where he put his cigars. And so the burn marks are still there. And they have, all his books and stuff. And here's furniture. His bedroom right here where he died is next door there. And in getting ready for this talk, I looked up to see if it's open to the public. And it's one of many really important buildings in the park that is not open now, which is really terrible in my opinion. But so if it ever opens up again, or I think maybe you can get private tours. It used to be the way a few years ago. So anyway, but it is a beautiful house, and he was quite a guy. Notice he died in 1836, and he was 88 years old. Not bad in that time. Yeah, preached his last sermon at St. Peter's. And I want to end with looking at a more recent addition to the park called Welcome Park, which is right here. It was the site of Samuel Carpenter's house that I showed you in the beginning, where William Penn stayed in 1700, 1701. Oh, God. We'll have a pause. Yeah. Okay. So here is Welcome Park. So, and the slate roof house where Penn issued his Charter of Privileges in 1701 granted both political and religious freedom to the inhabitants of Pennsylvania, a remarkable moment that was commemorated 50 years later with a casting of a bell for the State House, that bell. He called this his holy experiment and the seed of a nation, which it was. The new park was created by the Friends of Independence National Historical Park for the 300th anniversary of Penn's arrival in Philadelphia and was designed by the architect Robert Venturi, whom we'll meet in my third lecture. So here it is. He laid out this quarter acre, I think it is, in the Thomas Holmes grid of Philadelphia with this column in the center with an enlarged casting of the model for the statue on top of City Hall. Got that? And here it is. And then he also designed a model of the slate roof house, which stands on the point in the map on the grid where the house was. So that's the end for today. And I just show this map again. I just want to point out this is the William Penn arriving on the welcome. He's standing on the back here, looking out at his new city. And this is, a lot of the places we've been looking at. The Powell House is right there. Old Pine Church is right there, et cetera, et cetera. And if you look really closely, you can tell that that's me standing on the doorstep of that house. So next week we'll look at the Greek Revival architecture and the era of industrial dominance, and then go on out, and then we'll talk about the rest later. So thank you very much. I see a hand up.
We have time for a few questions. But before that, Libby made mention about Pennsylvania Hospital. I worked there for 24 years, so it's near and dear to my heart. And the original building that is now fondly known as the Old Pine Building, there are 8 rooms of the building that are being converted into a mini museum. And there was a big Stacy Peoples is the archivist for the hospital. And there was a big article in the paper long about February, I think, about the creation of this mini museum. So it's about to open. It's going to open in May. And what I plan to do is we are having Stacy, the speakers series is having Stacy come and speak at a lecture in the early to mid part of July on a Thursday. The following Wednesday, I'm doing a village college for a 1 hour on the Physic Garden, which was part of the founding of the hospital, except it didn't get actualized until 1976. And then following both of those, I would like to organize a tour downtown to see both the creation of the museum, and I'd take you through the garden. So that's coming along. So stay tuned.
Peggy has her hand up. Kathleen?
Yeah.
Peggy has her hand up. Go ahead, Jim.
When talking about preservation, I couldn't contain myself. Penn founded Philadelphia in 1681. And my 10th great-grandfather, James Delaplane, came to Germantown in 1690, one of the first non-German residents of Germantown. There were about 75 people here at the time, among the 35 families that came from Crefeld. And I mention this for a couple of reasons. One is that the PNC Bank, back in the 50s, recreated Delaplane House, which was James Delaplane's home, at the northeast corner of Schoolhouse Lane and Germantown Avenue, not having anything to do with the Delaplanes, but because I'm blocking on them the last name of George. There was a very famous preacher.
Whitfield.
Yes, Whitfield.
Yep.
Yeah, George Whitfield preached to people in Market Square in Germantown, and because of him, they recreated the Delaplane house, which I presume is in the Georgian style. Anyhow, if any of you are interested in this stuff, about a year ago, I wrote a little article for the Villager called beforeancestry.com. And the fascinating thing about this for me is that I had absolutely no knowledge of my ancestry until the mid 80s, when we were in the middle of Germantown, and found out then that our 10th great grandparents were founding members of the Germantown Friends Meeting.
Hi, can I just ask my little question?
Yes.
Was the original grid set up directly north-south?
I think it's not. I'm trying to remember.
I asked because we spent 38 years in Mount Airy, which was at an angle, and it always irritated me that we were
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right, but because it was based on what the land was, and not where it was north, south, east, west. Yeah.
Libby, I just want to ask, what's the origin of head house? What's
It's
the head?
the building at the head of the market.
Oh, okay. And that covered market, part of that is still there, right?
At the second and Pine, yes. The one at Second and Pine, yes.
Is it near Washington?
No, it's Pine
Okay.
Street to Lombard.
And then is that near the Swedes church?
No, it's
Okay.
It's
It is.
I'm trying to think what you would know in that area, but it's closer. It's still on Penn's grid, the southeast part of town. Yeah. Jim.
Just a clarification for Mount Airy and Germantown, the east-west considerations in the northeast section was because of the Great Road, and the Great Road was what became Germantown Avenue and Germantown Pike, which led from the city out into the suburbs. So it was
Country.
at an angle. It was not part of the initial grid.
Yeah. Great.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming, and come back next week.
Thank you, Gail. What am I doing?